Pieter-Dirk Uys is often known better as his alter ego, Evita Bezuidenhout. But in a new and intimate memoir called The Echo of a Noise, Uys takes the reader on a journey to the man behind the persona. It's a magnificent read. I've just finished it. Peter, very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
You know, I always worry when a person writes an autobiography because it says to me one word. Do you know what that word is?
Lies.
Retirement.
Oh, I see, not lies.
Lies as well, I don't know.
Retirement, no, I can't spell the word, so it doesn't work for me. I've been unemployed since 1975, so I must just keep going.
You know, I think we're in the same profession, because I also look at this as a degree of unemployment, because we enjoy what we're doing.
That's the point.
Yeah.
And without enjoyment, what's the point of doing it? And that was a therapy for me to actually go back to my childhood, which I don't think is that interesting. And yet, suddenly with the people around me, my father, my mother, Tannie Evita, our maid from Athlone, who became my second Cape Flats mother, and the tensions of growing up in a very, very mysterious household because of the denials. My mother's background, my father's fears for me. Yeah, it was important.
How difficult is it to reach back through an unbiased filter?
Is it ever unbiased? That's interesting. I think it is biased. I think by the second read of your first read, you start cutting the bias away and you start balancing. It's terribly important to speak to yourself, because once you write it, it's to you. I mean, nobody's looking over your shoulder. And
I guess there's a degree of kind of all being a bit cathartic as well, in a way. I mean, do you have to deal inwardly with demons?
You have to actually, well, I think you just have to find the entertaining demons, because there's some things that really don't travel.
And also, I mean, that's the biz you're in anyway, isn't it?
It is, it is. And also, my father was a fabulous storyteller, and he added noughts for effect, and I just kept on saying to myself, careful now, there's a nought on the horizon. Tell as much of the truth as you possibly can.
This should be a half-an-hour interview, but it's not, so we're going to skim through a couple of things that I found particularly important. I want to talk about a very important friend in your life, and that friend's name is Underwood.
Yes, my typewriter. Do you know, my mother brought the old, and it's an old black and white with all these little round teeth that you tap.
There's a lovely picture of it, yeah.
Beautiful. She brought it with her from Berlin when she came to Cape Town in 1937, with her grand piano in the one hand and her little typewriter in the other. And it was my friend. Ever since I can remember, this little typewriter was in my room. And of course, you had to have ribbons.
Yes.
And I've always typed with one finger to this very day. And my first play, I typed out on that little typewriter. So, you know, it really, it was important for me to end the story just saying that there is a very important friend who's now watching me.
It is in a battered little box with a battered leather handle to make it fit comfortably in the hand. But please tell me, your latter-day writing is done on a laptop.
It is. It's first done with hand.
Yeah.
My first draft is just the hand and on paper. But yes, it's wonderful on the laptop, but it's very dangerous because when you do corrections, you don't correct everything. You only correct the pieces that you want to correct, which means that you sometimes lose track of what was and what is and what should be. So I'm very careful of being completely happy with my laptop.
There's something visceral about a typewriter, though. I started my journalism career way back when, and that feeling of putting something on a typewriter.
And the noise is great, isn't it? Yeah. That tick, 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 ping, and the ping.
It's all very sanitized. You talk about the Northern Hemisphere being part of your cultural DNA. Is that really true, though? I mean, you certainly are a child of the South, aren't you?
Yes, but my father, being a musician, the music that he reveled in was music from Europe. My mother coming from Europe. So part of my creative DNA was trapped in the Northern Hemisphere. And I've adapted that DNA to fit in with... They once did a DNA test on me for a TV show some years ago, and they found out that I originated in the Congo. So I've got a little bit of the Congo there, and my bit of Europe, and that's who I am.
When I was doing Newsnight with Iman Rapetti a couple of years ago, I think we had a similar DNA thing done, and I think we were both related to the Russian royal family.
That's wonderful.
Which was fantastic. Don't believe a word of it, but anyway. Faces in the Wall.
Yes.
The first play.
First play.
And you wrote it in London.
In the kitchen in Kilburn in winter, freezing, and it was in the form of a letter to a friend of mine. We used to do things in funny ways. And this was supposedly a play. Peter sits in a very cold kitchen in Kilburn. He is typing, and suddenly a story came out, and it just happened. And after about 5 days of sitting there 24 hours a day, I had a play, and I thought, clear the old Vic, get rid of Laurence Olivier, I have a play. And that was about a character called Peter with a picture of Greta Garbo on his wall. So I had a picture of Sophia Loren on my wall, so it was a little bit autobiographical as well.
And of course the lifelong love affair with Sophia Loren, which we unfortunately can't get into. Was that the nexus moment, though? Did you realize at that point that not only being a performer, but being a playwright was what you wanted to do?
And writing it in London, which was the heartbeat of theatre.
Why was that important?
The heartbeat of live theatre. Everything was everything. Plays and players. All the focus of theatre was in. There was very little focus on South African theatre when I was in drama school. There was a man called Adolf Fugard who all talked like this and who didn't talk like this. We said "darling" beautifully. So, so it was just doing it there, and I produced it there in the film school in the holiday period, and that was in London.
You write in the book that the famous or infamous Adapt or Die came at the right time. In what way?
I think people, and by people I mean journalists who were very angry with the political system and people who didn't quite know what to do about it, wanted more than just the joke. They wanted to laugh at their fear, and basically the characters that made up Adapt or Die...
Remind us?
Well, there was P.W. Botha, hello. P.W. Botha, and look at me, I still look like the old bugger. Piet Koorn for the ears, and although they laughed, the reality of what they laughed at was absolutely terrible. I mean, Piet Koorn moving black people away from their homes into all that. Then there was, of course, Evita Bezuidenhout, who nobody expected would become the mouthpiece for a nation.
And still does.
And still does, from her kitchen in Luthuli House. And really, truly going through that list that Helen Suzman got out of Parliament every year, the reclassification of people. So many whites became coloured, so many coloureds became Indians, so many Indians were obscene and absurd and horribly funny.
But fodder to your pen.
Fodder to my pen, and also a very important nail in the coffin of taking things seriously.
Tell me, did you shed a tear last week when Piet Botha died?
I was sad because he was ill. Well, you know, Piet was like he was like the orange on my aerial, like the fur on my steering wheel. Ever since I did my one-man shows, he was there as the Minister of Foreign Affairs constantly. I did him in my first show as the Hamlet of Westdean. Then when Evita became the ambassador, we spread a rumor that Piet Botha, her boss, was having an affair with her, and he believed it. And that was just crazy, surreal, and also very important.
But he loved the work that you did, didn't he?
Piet Koorn was more of a fan. Piet eventually, when we had the comfort of democracy, saying, you know, Peter, I thought it was always, but we had to be very careful not to, you know, do. And till quite recently, Evita and he were together at the Woordfeest like an old Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton.
I'm glad you mentioned one-man shows. That's what you're kind of known for, I guess. Has it got easier over the years? Do you default to a formula inside? You know how it goes, you know what the audience wants, or are you still daunted and terrified every time you have to do it?
Well, I know how it works. It works with 5 boxes on stage, which means there's no budget for a set. That's very important. And I have to be very mobile, put it in a suitcase and move. But it's very, very difficult. I mean, I have to reinvent so many parts of my repertoire because so many of the things in this new minefield of hashtags and hate speech cannot be said. There are words I cannot say. Words that are funny and quite affectionate can be seen as hate speech by the people who hate what I say. So I have to find ways of surprising audiences for them to laugh at the things they wouldn't have laughed at.
Peter, you're on stage. I'm on television. I'm getting a signal in my ear now saying I am 2 minutes over. So between you and I, should I just ask that final question? Because we're in control.
Yes, absolutely,
here,
absolutely.
I mean, there's a trial to go through. There's a news conference to go to.
Much more important and much
Let's do this. Let's do this very quickly. You also say that as you I know you've just turned 50. Don't answer me. You say your anger hasn't really mellowed.
It hasn't mellowed, but it is creative. I don't feel guilty and I don't blame people for things. I just find out what can I do to find a balance of 49% anger, 51% entertainment. That means you will enjoy what I say. If it's the other way around, you'll go home because then I'm shouting like everybody else.
The book is called The Echo of a Noise, a memoir of then and now. Pieter-Dirk Uys, thank you very much indeed. You know what I'm going to ask you to do, don't you? Because this is very important.
A great pleasure.
And I really appreciate you coming into this afternoon.